How would you like a 15% discount to my daily email, the stack of stuff, the show notes, discounts to the conference, all of that? All you need to do is text the word show to 33777. You'll get the annual subscription with a 15% discount to my daily email. You'll get the stack of stuff, the links to the show notes, discounts to the conference, and so much more. All you have to do is text the word show, SHOW, to 33777. Text show to 33777.
Welcome to the Eric Erickson Show podcast, Hour 1.
Welcome. It is Eric Erickson here across the United States of America. For those of you on my flagship station, WSB, and the Georgia affiliates, of which I have many, following this story at Appalachia High School in Barrow County, there's apparently been a school shooting. We don't know any details. Police are asking everyone to stay away from the scene, other than I know parents are being called to come get their kids. A friend of mine texted me his family's affected by it. As soon as we find out information, I will let you know. That school is about 1,900 students. It's a very large high school here in Georgia, and events are still playing out there, so I don't have anything for you. As soon as I know something, I will let you know. I want to begin in a weird way today. This is probably going to be the weirdest open of this program ever, but it ties into so much of the news that I want to cover today. It's an appropriate way to start, and I referenced it a little bit yesterday in a short segment, but the more I thought about it, the more this is actually how I want to begin the show today. I want to talk about orcs. Yes, orcs from Lord of the Rings. Stay with me here, please. Just follow along with me here. What is an orc? J.R.R. Tolkien gave birth to the orc. In The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings, Silmarillion talks about them and gives, in various letters and writings, essentially plays off as he's quite unsure as to where they actually came from, but he has some hypotheses of where they're from. And essentially they're fallen elves originally and then can procreate themselves. Again, bear with me here. Just bear with me. If you know anything about J.R.R. Tolkien, he was a committed Catholic. And Lord of the Rings, implicitly at first and then explicitly in revisions, reflected his theology. The theology of the Catholic Church and the theology of most of Christendom is this, that of all of God's creation, only mankind can repent. That I should credit my buddy Josh, who's far smarter than me and a far better writer, and so you're essentially getting a kindergartner's translation of Albert Einstein's theory of relativity with me. But essentially, the human heart has a line through it through which evil can cross and mankind can repent and get back on the other side of the line. No other creature, including an angel, has that. And so J.R.R. Tolkien, to some degree, speculates that perhaps the orcs are fallen angels or fallen elves, but an elf, an angel, an orc, none of them have the capacity to repent. Once they choose to become evil, there's no course of repentance. It's the same with the devil falling from heaven, that there's no recourse for the devil to return to heaven, because once you, a non-human, have chosen evil, you're not going to choose good again. You have to understand that hell is a choice. A lot of people are like, well, I mean, why would God destine so many people to go to hell? Hell is a choice. You choose to go to hell. That is the theology of Tolkien. May not be your theology, but you got to understand that. Now, it's relevant to understand that the orc is essentially the embodiment of evil, the foot soldier of evil, and cannot in any way become good. And part of the theology of Catholicism and much of Christianity is that evil cannot create good, it can only mock. So anything evil does, it cannot actually make something holy itself. It can only mimic what God himself has created. And because evil can only mock, evil cannot understand virtue, because virtue is something divinely created and it can only mock virtue, which is why in Lord of the Rings, Sauron cannot fathom a sacrificial mission by two hobbits to throw a ring into a volcano. He can't fathom such sacrifice because that sacrifice is based on virtue. And he, being evil, does not have the capacity to understand virtue, only to mock virtue. So he can't understand that there would ever be a plot. How could it be that these hobbits could not be discovered? Because evil can't understand sacrificial virtue. The devil can't understand why Jesus would put himself on a cross to die. But what's happening in modern society, J.R.R. Tolkien invents the orc, conjures it for his mythology for Lord of the Rings. And the orc is then taken into things such as Dungeons and Dragons. The orc becomes this evil creature in Dungeons and Dragons. And the nerds in high school, I had friends. I've played it a couple times. I admit when I was in high school, I had super nerdy friends, and they loved to role play Dungeons and Dragons. Dungeons and Dragons has over time been embraced by the queer community. And whether you're a paladin, a mage, a knight, an orc, whatever, you can embody your queerness and explore your queerness through your character in Dungeons and Dragons, apparently. And so guess what's happened? The orc has now become part of the queer community. And the orc have moms and dads and children, and they're just misanthropic adventurers. They're misunderstood. They're just as normal as you and me. Not just that, you see this in this new Rings of Power series at Amazon, where the orcs don't really want to go to war. They have moms and dads and loved ones and things like that. They're misanthropic anti-heroes. Just one side of the coin. Now, you have to understand that rejects what the orc represents, which is an creation that is so far past the fall that they're irredeemable. You have to understand that the orc is the living embodiment of what it is to be in hell. There's no getting out of hell once you've made the choice to go into hell. You're not getting out, and you don't even want to be redeemed. Again, hell is a choice, and once you've made the choice, the idea that I can be redeemed is out the window. But not only that, where the orc derives from whether you say elves or fallen angels or what have you, there's not a capacity for redemption. So to then portray the orc in modern society as some bastion of queerness that is just misunderstood, it's to normalize the deviancy, where deviancy can become normalized and the normal can become deviant. It's all about power. And this whole reimagining of the orc and its power and lack thereof and its ability to be redeemed plays across the progressive left into a narrative of the acquisition of power, recasting the good as bad and the bad as good. History, they say written by the victors. Actually, what if the victors don't write it? We can write it and reframe what it actually is, and we can now understand things that could not otherwise be understood. And we can, of course, now recognize that only the bad old white guys of the West would say that this poor orc is irredeemable. And it's those bad guys of the West, lorded over by an American Christian culture, that allows us to view this poor creature as irredeemable. Never mind, that creature was meant to be the embodiment of irredeemable evil. Now we're going to redeem it. Which leads me to Tucker Carlson, who yesterday, or day before yesterday, had on an amateur historian. He's not a credentialed historian by any means. In fact, he's a pretty terrible historian. But the guy is a Nazi apologist. And I lead with the left and the ridiculousness of taking the embodiment of evil that is the orcs and redefining them as some misunderstood poor soul to what Tucker Carlson and Candace Owens and this guy are doing the part of the progressive right. They're not alt-right, they're progressive right. They're as progressive as the left. It's about the progress of power on either side. They've decided to rewrite the history of the Nazis. And the Nazis, you see, were actually the victims of World War II. The Nazis, you see, that they were undermined by the Jews and by Winston Churchill, who, according to Tucker Carlson's guest is actually the bad guy of World War II, and he has to get a whole lot of history wrong to lead himself to believe that Winston Churchill had the authority to do things he could not do and chose not to do them and completely revise it. And Tucker Carlson is just asking questions. He calls this historian the most honest, most trusted historian of the age. He's not honest and he's not trusted. He's a professional contrarian. And much as the progressive left is contrarianism towards the American project, so too is this progressive right contrary to the American project. Because you see, follow the lines here. Tucker Carlson, Candace Owens, these historians that they're platforming and others are headed down the road towards America is bad. We were on the side of Winston Churchill. And because we were on the side of Winston Churchill, we aligned with the bad guy. Yes, the project explicitly denounces Winston Churchill as the bad guy, and Hitler is the victim of his own success. In fact, this historian who is with Tucker Carlson explains the deaths of millions of Soviets this way. He says they were just victims of their own success. They were able to capture such a huge amount of land and territory and peoples. They didn't expect to be overwhelmed with the humanitarian crisis from all their prisoners of war. And rather than letting them starve, the Nazi command suggested put a bullet in their head because it would be more humane for them to die quickly than to die at length of starvation. Never mind that if you actually read the Nazis of the day, they were very clear that they intended to exterminate these people and take their lands. They did not wish to intermingle with the Slavic people because they were the Nazis. All of this on the progressive left and the progressive right comes from a postmodernity where you can have your truth and I can have my truth, and who cares what the actual truth is. But more importantly, also comes from an idea that power is everything. Principle is nothing. Power is everything. And so if you align yourself not with principle but power, it becomes very easy to then degrade the American experience, which Tucker unquestionably has been wanting to do for some time, and which the left, of course, has wanted to do for some time. And so you find this horseshoe theory that the people at the outer edges of both parties are the same people. They both, from the left and the right, want to undermine the United States. And one of the ways they want to undermine the United States is through the Judeo-Christian principles. The left, of course, takes the Judeo-Christian principles and says, well, you know, of course, look at what they've done to queerness and the suppression of our souls. And then on the right, they say, well, look at Judeo-Christian history. The Jews, we've got to exorcise them from the whole project. Christ, of course, was a Jew. And so we have to get rid of the grounding principles of Judeo-Christian Western civilization. What's so funny is that many of these people on the right say, well, the left has done this, and instead of bringing it back, they want something new. So this historian who was on with Tucker Carlson actually posited, you know, the picture of they used the Last Supper, but it was the Bacchanalia with all the pagans at the Olympics. He says it was actually better to have the Nazis taking over Paris than to have this. And a lot of people are always like, you're right, you know. I mean, yeah, the Nazis wouldn't be degrading Christ. No, they were killing all the priests. How about the other? Instead of having the Bacchanalia making fun of the Lord's Supper or the pagan Nazis in Paris, we actually have a restoration of a Judeo-Christian world order. Neither side wants that because then that has a special role for power that neither of them could use to harness. Now, you're like Erickson. What is all of this about? Why are you on here? Because I want you to see something before we begin all the subjects of the day. That there is a progressive left and a progressive right. Many of you identify tribally with one side or the other, and what you're missing is that both of those sides are trying to discredit the American experiment into something it wasn't for their acquisition of power. And to do that, they must undermine the Judeo-Christian foundations of who we are as a people, because what is the chief end of man? To glorify God. And how do you do that? You love God and you love your neighbor. And if we loved our neighbor and we loved God, we wouldn't have time for these fringe projects of restoring the Nazis and the Orcs. And yet on the left, they want to restore one, and on the right, they want to restore the other. And what happens to the rest of us? We become pawns in a power scheme where they don't really care about us. They don't really care about the restoration or the making America great again. They fundamentally believe this country's bad. Tucker Carlson does, and these people on the left do. They think we're on the wrong side of history, and they wish to exert themselves with power over principle. Tucker Carlson's going to be on the campaign trail with Republicans, a man who just platformed a Nazi apologist who left him not only unchallenged, but called him trusted and honest. You should be raising your eyebrows about what's happening among progressives on the left and the right now. There should be no room on our side for anyone who tries to rewrite history to make the Nazis the misunderstood misfits of World War II. The Nazis, like the Orcs, they're the embodiment of evil in the Western world. Do not give room in your political movement to anyone who says otherwise, or bad things will happen, and that's what they want.
Blinds.com Cyber Monday Last Chance is happening now. Don't miss out on up to 45% off site-wide. A Blinds.com design expert can help you make the perfect selection on your schedule. We can handle everything from measure to your whole home installed for one low cost. With over 25 million windows covered, Blinds.com is the #1 online retailer of custom window coverings. Save up to 45% site-wide, plus a free professional measure right now at Blinds.com. Rules and restrictions may apply.
Welcome back. It is Eric Erickson here. There has been a school shooting here in Georgia, Appalachia High School in Barrow County. We are continuing to follow events. There are conflicting reports from the press. I'm not going to get into speculation based on the rumors and gossip as to what we know. There do appear to be a suspect in custody confirmed by police. Sheriff's office will not confirm casualties and conditions of victims as of yet. There is starting to be news trickling out, but I prefer to take a go slow approach to the rush of people. But prayers appreciated. This is Barrow County, Georgia. Appalachia High School is about between 1,700 and 1,900 students, a massive, massive school. And everyone's being evacuated from the school right now. We do not know a lot of information yet. We're waiting for police. As events warrant, I will interrupt whatever I'm talking about to bring more coverage. I have a lot of affiliates in Georgia and the Southeast paying attention to this story. And I mean, it is becoming national news. CNN's now covering it, Fox News covering it, and elsewhere. So I'll keep you up to date as I learn information about this. Police are at the scene. People have been asked to stay away from the school, except the parents of kids who can come and get their children. That is everything I know at this moment. As more comes in that I can substantiate, I will let you know. Right now, I need to tell you about Old Glory Bank. My bank has been around now for over a year. What Old Glory Bank did, unlike some of the other supposed conservative bank startups that were out there, is they actually bought a bank in Oklahoma that was a highly regarded, financially stable bank, rebranded it as Old Glory, and made it available to everyone nationwide to be able to use as an online bank. And I use them. I have a direct deposit with them. I have a checking account. I have a savings account. And I have not had a problem with them. Not only that, even though they're online, you can develop a relationship with them. You can do loans, mortgages, you name it. Your kids can have a custodial account with no fee checking, no fee savings. And they're good people. They were started as conservatives, by conservatives, for conservatives, knowing that there is a debanking trend out there where a lot of banks, they won't let you make gun purchases, for example, with an ATM card, or they won't let you have a bank account if you are a conservative of some note. So you can go to oldglorybank.com, get an account, member FDIC, equal housing lender, terms and conditions apply. Welcome back. It is Eric Erickson here across the nation, continuing to follow the school shooting. There does appear to be one dead, one in custody, others hurt. We don't know the condition. This school in Appalachia High in Barrow County, Georgia, near Winder, getting a lot of texts from listeners from my flagship station and from my Athens and Clarksville stations as well, with family affected. Massive high school in Georgia. We'll keep you up to date as we learn more. There is one in custody that can be confirmed right now. I gotta move on to some other stuff. Why begin again with of all the most esoteric topics to begin with, the orcs and the Nazis and the revisions of history and all that. I'm actually a little bit concerned that Republicans are campaigning with Tucker Carlson, who is becoming, first he went to Russia and served as an apologist for Putin, bragging about just how wonderful Russia is compared to the United States. And now he's letting on historians, leaving them unchallenged and promoting them, saying that the Nazis were actually the good guys of World War II. And Winston Churchill, of all people, was the bad guy. Complete revision of history. It is all about the acquisition of power and also about undermining the United States as the last best hope for mankind. There actually is, on the left and the right, this continuing push to undermine the American experiment. And it's a little bit troubling that Republicans, including the presidential ticket, are going to be out on the campaign trail with a guy who is becoming a Nazi apologist. And I hate to hurt your feelings by being so blunt about it, but you don't put a historian on your program and tout him as the most trusted and honest historian and leave unchallenged his complete revision of World War II, that the poor Nazis were actually the good guys, and it was the Jews and Winston Churchill who were the bad guys. Should be a big red flag. Now, related to all of that, actually, and what's going on here, one of the benefits of listening to my program, actually, it's the downside for me and the upside for you. So the upside for you is I get to tell you what's going on behind the scenes. What are the private conversations? The downside for me is that oftentimes you all believe that I am endorsing what I'm telling you is happening. No, I'm just making you smarter than your friends by telling you what's going on. And I told you this was happening last week, and I got lit up for telling you, and now I've made the lead story at Politico's Playbook. A few days ago, conservative commentator Eric Erickson raised eyebrows in GOP circles when he spilled a dirty little secret. Some Republicans are privately okay with a Donald Trump loss on Election Day. It's true. I'm not affirming that view. I'm telling you that view is out there. And to the extent I raised eyebrows in Republican circles by spilling this dirty little secret and making it public, the goal here is that my listeners and viewers actually get the internal goings on within the Republican Party, so you're not surprised when everyone else is. You heard it here first. And what I told you last week is the conversation that's going on, and it picked up steam when Donald Trump made his muddled statements on abortion last week. Let me explain to you what is happening within the Republican Party. This is the conversation going on. And again, I'm not endorsing it. I'm just telling you this is what's happening. Republicans, a lot of them, more than you wish to realize, are having this conversation. We have a really good shot at taking the United States Senate. Joe Manchin guarantees us 50 seats in the Senate. With him gone, Governor Justice gets elected. That's 50-50 Senate. John Tester's toast. Tim Sheehy is beating him in Tester's internal polling, and even Tester is telling allies that he's probably toast. That gives us 51 seats. Between that and a 6-3 U.S. Supreme Court, we can hold off Kamala Harris for 2 years and get reinforcements. Then we can fight in 2028 for the White House. If Trump gets in, we're set back the pro-life cause. We're set back free markets. We've set back national security. If Trump becomes president, we're going to get wiped out in 2026, probably get wiped out in 2028. Clarence Thomas, he's not getting any younger. We're going to lose that seat on the Supreme Court. If Trump loses, we can live to fight another day, and we can get rid of Trumpism and MAGA, and in 2028, we can reboot the GOP. We'll pick up seats in 2026. We'll save governor's mansions. We'll save the Supreme Court. We'll save the judiciary. We'll have the Senate. You may not like that this conversation's happening, but don't kid yourselves. This conversation is happening a lot. Jonathan Martin of Politico played off that tweet and has a piece in the headline, "If Republicans want to win, they need Trump to lose big. To dominate the country once more, Republicans need to hasten the move to a post-Trump party." That's what Republicans in Washington, D.C. are telling Jonathan Martin. Okay. I want to lay this one out for you. This, again, gets into the revisions of history and the making good the bad, the good. There are a lot of people out there who think the Republicans have a Donald Trump problem. If Trump goes away, the party heals. So it's better for Trump to lose in 2024. Let me suggest something else. The party doesn't have a Donald Trump problem. The party has a base problem. The voters of the Republican Party have so thoroughly rejected the McCain era and the Romney era, and they went with Donald Trump, who did something that those guys didn't do, beat the Democrats. Not just any Democrats, Hillary Clinton. So the base has processed Donald Trump winner. Now, what the other side says is actually Donald Trump loser, that Hillary Clinton was a terrible candidate, Donald Trump won, and we've been losing ever since. We lost in 2020, we lost in 2018, we lost in 2022 when we should have won. Look at what happened in Virginia. The base of the party fundamentally got broken by Trump, and the only way to get rid of it and to heal it is to actually get rid of Trump. That's what the leadership says. The problem is the leadership doesn't understand that the leadership doesn't control the party now. The base controls the party, and the base is furious with the leadership for continually failing and compromising. Look at the SAFE Act. I say this lovingly. I say this gently to my friends in the Senate Republican Conference. I know you want a clean bill to fund the government. You don't want a government shutdown. If you don't support Speaker Johnson's effort to get the SAFE Act tied to it, the fire's going to turn on you because you have a base problem. From Washington, D.C., I have a sense that the guys in the Senate and the House, they think that we actually understand how government works. You people out there in the heartland, you think you know, you don't really know, you need to trust us. But from the heartland, people interpret that as y'all are dumb, we're smart, watch us get what we want, and oh, by the way, the national debt is out of control, we bankrupted the nation, and we haven't repealed Obamacare, and we haven't kept any of our promises to you. The base of the party is furious with the Republicans in Washington. For those of you unfamiliar with the SAFE Act would essentially require proof of citizenship to vote. As the Democrats have flooded the country with illegal aliens, and there is evidence that illegal aliens have been registered to vote, maybe they can't actually vote because their registration doesn't process. Like, for example, there was a video circulated in the state of Georgia of individuals who were registering illegal aliens to vote. There's a problem with that in Georgia. In Georgia, the state runs its voter registration database through a federal government citizen check. It's the same check that you get run through for background checks. So when the state of Georgia processes your voter registration, you can fill out the voter registration form. But because you fill out the form does not mean you're registered to vote. What happens is the form goes back to the local board of elections and it gets run through this federal database. And if the database doesn't match a social security number as tied to a citizen, your voter registration application is rejected. It's put in a hold pile pending proof of citizenship, and you got to go in and show your passport or your birth certificate. So you can fill out, you got to keep this in mind. It's like, for example, I get people all the time saying I'm getting absentee ballots at my house. This is a fraud. No, you're not getting an absentee ballot. You're getting an absentee ballot request form for you to be able to fill it out and request an absentee ballot. You haven't gotten an absentee ballot in the mailbox. What you're getting is a form you can fill out to try to get an absentee ballot. In the same way, you can fill out the voter registration form, but it doesn't mean you're registered to vote. The problem is, though Democrats say it's rare means it has happened that illegal aliens have voted in this country. And it is undoubtedly true that in Democratic parts of this country, including New York, San Francisco, and the District of Columbia, local governments have allowed illegal aliens to vote in local elections. What the SAFE Act does is it would prohibit people from voting in elections in this country unless they are proven to be American citizens. Republicans in the Senate should fight with all their heart for this to be tied to the budget. Here's why. Your base wants to see you fight on this issue, and it actually is a winning issue. Get the Democrats to campaign against integrity of the vote. Let them campaign against it. I know you're afraid of being blamed for a government shutdown. But the fact of the matter is you need to fight on this. You very much should be fighting to make sure only citizens can vote. Now, let's jump back to this Jonathan Martin piece. The problem here is that there are a lot of Republicans in Washington who are convinced that we don't need to have these sorts of fights. We just need to let Trump lose. I think what happens is if you let Donald Trump lose, you say, okay, we can just hold our breath. You can just hold our breath and we can wait out a Kamala Harris. Many of you think that. The problem is you then again change the dynamic of the electorate. And one of the things Donald Trump did is he brought in a lot of voters to the GOP who've never been a part of it before. And I have to remind myself of that sometimes. When I get people who send me hate mail, you're a rhino, you haven't done anything, you're not a conservative. Like, these are people who weren't paying attention to politics until just yesterday. And they've decided that they're experts on politics by virtue of their entry, and they've decided that proof that you're a Republican is you align completely with Donald Trump when Donald Trump himself was a Democrat until a few minutes ago. But you kind of want to find a place for these people. They're diehards. They're going to show up. They've thus far only showed up for Donald Trump. You want to try to get them into actually voting for the party. But the dirty little secret is that a lot of these people in Washington, D.C. who want Trump just to lose and we can move on, they also don't want these people in the coalition. They don't think they're really their voters. They're not necessarily pro-life. They're not necessarily free market people. They're not necessarily America first people. They say America first, but America first on the world stage, leading the world. They don't really want that. They want American retreat. And I think if Donald Trump loses, that civil war within the Republican Party, just gas gets poured on it. If Trump wins, you have some level of peace in our time, so to speak. If Donald Trump wins the election, in some way, it pushes aside all of the issues that have to be dealt with to 2028. And I actually think that's better for the party than fighting it out in the minority. Winning is always better than losing. Winning the executive branch and the regulatory agencies is better than losing the executive branch and the regulatory agencies. So while I understand the view of the people who say, well, we'll hold the Senate, we'll hold the Supreme Court, we can wait out Kamala Harris. Well, I understand that view. I just think you're badly, badly mistaken. And if you think the fighting is bad now, you ain't seen nothing until you've lost this time, as the Trump versus not Trump in the Republican Party really comes to a head in a way it never would if he won a second term. Now, I got to tell you about Hillsdale College, which is putting constitutional principle ahead of everything else. And I got to tell you, you can learn a lot. I went to law school in undergrad. My concentration in political science and history was American constitutional government and the Revolutionary War. And then in law school, my best class was con law. And I took Hillsdale's free class on the Constitution, and I still learned stuff. You can too. You can even sign up for their podcast network and get great free podcasts, conversations with Larry Arnn and great scholars. You can get so much for free, including a Primus at Hillsdale College. All you do is go to ericforhillsdale.com. ERICK, ericforhillsdale.com. You go sign up for Hillsdale College's podcast network and Primus, get their free classes. There's so much great content from Hillsdale College. You can enjoy it. All you do, go to ericforhillsdale.com today. ERICK, ericforhillsdale.com. Go sign up and start learning from Hillsdale College. It's education, not indoctrination, free of charge from Hillsdale College. ericforhillsdale.com. Hello and welcome. It is Eric Erickson here. The phone number 877-973-7425. This does appear to be at least one dead, multiple people injured, one person arrested. The school shooting in Barrow County. My flagship station's moved into full coverage there, but a lot of other stations. This is becoming a big developing national story as well. Of course, people are immediately rushing out on the left on gun control and blaming Brian Kemp, among other things. We'll see what the actual details of this situation are. Okay. I got to move on to other stuff, including Greta Thunberg has been arrested. My son actually yesterday, let me find his text message to me. My son had gone to Barnes & Noble. And, there's a Who Is book, and it's little biographies, understandable biographies of famous people. Well, apparently Greta Thunberg is one of those, and Who Is Greta Thunberg? And my son sent me that picture with the caption, "You don't know? How dare you?" She has, of course, become a punchline for many of us. She's been arrested in Copenhagen at a protest. I kind of do feel sorry for this girl, but at some point, you got to take responsibility for your own actions. So this is a girl who clearly is on the spectrum. No one has ever denied it. She is autistic in some capacity and has been told from an early age by her parents and by others that the world is coming to an end in less than 10 years. And so good for her having the courage of her convictions to do something, and horrible that these people lied to her the entire time and scared her out of her mind that the world was going to end and we're all going to die. She's old enough now to realize that's not true. And yet she still is a borderline environmental terrorist in what she chooses to do. She won't fly. She'll take a boat, but she won't fly because she thinks that's terrible for the environment. It's just kind of sad to see someone that brainwashed. At the same time, she's old enough to take responsibility for her actions. And she should. But she's not going to. She believes she's saving the planet. She believes her cause is righteous, and she is a zealot. This hour of the program brought to you by First Liberty Building Loan. If you're buying a building, you're buying a franchise, you need a heavy equipment loan, First Liberty can help you. FirstLibertyGA.com. FirstLibertyGA.com. Should you wish to work with them, let them know I sent you. Spend 10 minutes with them. See if you're fit for them. See if they're fit for you. FirstLibertyGA.com. They can help any business nationwide. When we come back, I want to switch the show up. I want to talk next hour what I was going to wait until the third hour to talk about because I feel it. I think if the election were held today, Donald Trump would win. The reason I say this is not my opinion. It's because if you follow the candidates and the money, Kamala Harris should not, with about 60 days left in the election, be campaigning in Virginia, New Hampshire, and Minnesota. But she is. If you're winning those states, you don't campaign in those states in the same way Donald Trump doesn't campaign in Texas and Kamala Harris doesn't campaign in California. So why is she campaigning in states that were real weak when Biden was president unless she's not winning those states?